My approach is, tell me about you. Where are you from? Do you have family? How did you get into this business? What sort of hobbies do you have? I mean, really build that early rapport with somebody first. And then at that point, their guard is down.
Welcome to Career Plug. Hi and good morning. It is a Sunday morning. I have a special guest, but first, before I get to him, if you have not, please like and subscribe. I am looking to explore careers and bring guests on who actually live and work these careers to provide insight, advice, and counsel. With that, I want to welcome again a special guest, Matt Peeler, to my episode. Matt works for Maple Mark Bank. He has been in the banking industry for most of his career, I believe. I will let him provide the introduction. But first, I'd like to know, Matt, what are you plugged into these days?
Yeah, well, Gene, it's a pleasure to be here. Happy Sunday to you and to your audience. I mean, right now, my life, in terms of what I'm plugged into, pretty much revolve around my job, which is being a commercial USDA lender nationwide, being a husband and a father. So I've got a wife and three young kids at home and a fourth on the way. And then aside from that, I like to play tennis and go to the gym. So, work, home, exercising is kind of what I'm plugged into. And also just, spiritually, I'm a man of faith and, I do pray and I do believe that God has an active role in my life and in those around me as well.
I love that. I love that intro as a man of faith as well. That is one thing we clicked on. We've known each other probably surprisingly at this point 3 years. We are relatively new friends, but when we haven't even actually physically met, but we instantly clicked when we were working on some prior projects. So I am again really excited to have you on the show. I like you as a person, and not only are you very personable and upbeat and enthusiastic, you're also very smart. You're witty, funny, intelligent. So I am not your wife, but I can see what she likes in you.
Thanks, Gideon. And the feeling's mutual, man. I agree with everything you said. We've known each other 3 years, but I feel like we have a close bond with one another, and we've had some deep conversations in a short period. And I feel like there's a lot of areas where we connect and align quite well together as friends and I'd say former colleagues, even though we were at different employers, we worked together day to day. So.
Correct, correct. So with that, let's get into your background before we get into banking. And I think this is an industry, obviously one of the oldest industries in America. And for the most part, people, think of the retail section of banking, when they walk into a bank, et cetera. But they don't know that there are other roles in banks, sales roles, other, business development roles. There are other things that are possible in banking. But let's start with your background. I know you live in North Carolina, but why don't you give me a brief background?
Yeah. Well, I'll start off education wise and then we'll go into my career. So, I went to college at East Carolina University, which is in Greenville, North Carolina. And the reason I went to
That's where Mr.
ECU,
Beast went.
yes, that's right.
I
Yes.
bet you didn't think I
Sandra
knew that.
Bullock. Sandra Bullock also went to ECU. It's another fun fact. She came down from New Jersey,
Wow.
and there's a lot of folks from up north that come down to school there for whatever reason. Probably the nice weather that we have. Um, But I was originally recruited to ECU to play Division I tennis, and kind of all through my young life, from age 5 all the way through high school, that was really my focus, was playing tennis. I was very active in the USTA, United States Tennis Association, and really my first goal growing up was to get a college scholarship as an athlete, and I successfully did that. So went to ECU in 2006 and knew that I was going to be playing tennis. But honestly, at that time, I really didn't know what I wanted to do career wise. I grew up. My parents, my mom was a public school teacher. She taught music, and she was also a chorus or a choir director at church as well. So she worked two jobs. My father, when I was first born, he was actually in the clothing business. He was a clothier. So there was a local
Wow.
clothing shop in North Carolina, and that's what he would do. Is he would, men and women would come in, and he would, tell them what the latest fashion trends were, and he would fit people for suits, and teach you how to tie a necktie, and all sorts of stuff. Helped plan for weddings. And then somewhere down the road, he got into wealth management. So became a wealth advisor, where he was actually managing other people's money. And then along the way, he started to acquire some residential real estate. So he's also a property manager, and started his business from scratch. He didn't inherit anything. Really started from the bottom, and got some dirt in between his nails, and was able to build to what he has now. And so, my starting point in life was living with two parents that worked for everything that they had to provide for me and for my siblings. And, fortunately, they instilled in me early, work ethic, and, putting in the time and the practice to get where you want to go in life. And so for me, tennis was really that first starting point. They taught me the game at a young age, and they said, look, if this is something you really want to take, to college, we support you in doing that. So went to college, and, kind of with all that in the background, I knew that I wanted to major in business. And initially it was marketing for me, mainly because I've always liked sales and going out and being able to market a product or service to a wider audience. It's just something that really appealed to me. And in my rising junior year in college, my very first internship, I got to work for Fox Sports Network out in Los Angeles for a summer. I was part of their marketing department. And in that particular role, it was my job basically to watch highlights from various sporting events. So baseball games, basketball games, football games. And basically what I would do is I would watch a highlight, and any time a major play would happen, like you're watching baseball and somebody hits a home run, or you're watching football and somebody scores a touchdown, I would actually record when that happened, and who the key players were. And then when Fox Sports would go and air highlights on their shows and on their commercials, they would pull the information that I directly had generated from watching those live events.
Got
It's
it.
pretty cool. Um,
Very cool.
but with marketing, a lot of it too is kind of graphics design and very creative type of tasks, which I was good at that. But as I got further into my college experience, I just felt like that there were other opportunities out there for me. And basically, here's how it happened, how I got into banking at ECU. The first bank that I worked for, which was BB&T, which that stands for Branch Bank and Trust. And as you know, they have now merged with SunTrust and have become Truist. But BB&T actually had a permanent office on campus at ECU, and they would host interviews for college students that were getting ready to graduate, and were interested in learning more about banking. So I got a chance to interview with some bankers that worked for BB&T, and what drew me to banking was really the ability to help small business owners access capital for their businesses. So somebody that's in the community, that's created jobs, a small to middle sized business that just really needs a strategic partner to be able to help them grow. Because what I've learned is that a lot of business owners are great at operating their businesses, but they're not experts on the financing side. They may not be aware of all the products and services out there that can help them grow. And if you're let's say you're a service based business where you don't have a lot of collateral, let's say you don't own your building, you don't have a bunch of machinery and equipment, you basically have customers, and that's your business. You provide a service to customers. A lot of those businesses don't realize that there are loan products out there specific for that type of business. You don't necessarily need heavy assets like real estate and equipment to be able to go out and get a loan to let's say hire more people, or to market your business, create a website, expand into a new market, etc. There are programs out there like that exist. So anyway, as I went through college, I fast realized that banking was the route that I wanted to take, not only to help businesses, but also because I knew that I could still go into sales, because that's what being a lender is. It's educating and selling your institution's financial products and services. And then thirdly, most people, they want to be able to have a family and provide financially, right? And so that was the other part of the equation, is I knew as a banker that I could still reach a certain level financially where I wouldn't have to go to school for 10 plus years like a doctor in order to get the results that I'm was looking for personally and professionally.
Geez, wow. Thank you. Very robust, not only introduction to who you are and hard work ethic that was instilled in you, and then your parents worked really hard to provide enough resources. Tennis lessons, golf lessons, etc., are not cheap. So typically, resources are needed to pursue endeavors like that. And then for you to focus on that, get a scholarship to ECU, and after that, kind of, look at something that some may view as practical. You had some exposure to a city like Los Angeles. So, I would think most people, after being out there, even for a summer, coming from North Carolina, would be like, "Hey, I'm going to figure out how to come back out here and work for Fox Sports, or get somehow involved." But you took a little bit more of a practical approach, and do you credit that sort of to it just made sense at the time, or there was a job offer that was or was not there, to head back out to a place like LA, or were you in a position to say, I'm going to go back out there and figure out how to make it work, or did you just not want to, consider any of those options?
Yeah, well, you've touched on some good points. Well, certainly for me, that internship was the first time I'd ever been to the West Coast before. I grew up in a small, rural town in North Carolina, and I had some relatives that lived out in LA. That's actually the reason I got the internship. I have a relative who actually he was part of a graphics design slash marketing company, and he knew I was a college athlete. And by the time I reached my sophomore year, I had not yet worked an internship. So I had reached out to him and said, "Hey, are there any opportunities out in LA? I'd love to come out there and see what this part of the world is like." So, for me, getting on the road and going somewhere new, and living in a pretty bottom end apartment in Santa Monica, but I had actually had a hole in my shower. I had two roommates. It was like $1,500 a month for just the most low end apartment you can imagine. But I don't know, it just it showed me what's possible, getting out of my box and going somewhere new, and really just seeing what is possible. in terms of, why did I not pursue that particular route? It's not like I didn't enjoy it or I didn't think there was an opportunity there. I would just say things started to evolve. I did want to stay in North Carolina after I graduated from college, just because that's where all my family is located. And at that particular time, I had a college girlfriend who desired to stay in North Carolina as well. So, yeah, but the practicality, I think, was part of it. Just really, using the experience that I had and taking that to the next phase. I will
Got it.
say, looking back, I wish I had done more than just one internship, because for me, that was the only internship that I ever had through college. One of the reasons for that is I was a college athlete. So when the summers would roll around, I just wanted to take a break, frankly. I just wanted
Hmm.
to go home and enjoy my summer and spend time with friends. But like, if I could go back and talk to myself at that age, I would have tried to have internships all 4 years of college. So if there are folks listening in today, that would be one of my pieces of advice: is find as many internships as you can. And I'm going to use your word, Gene, plug yourselves in with as many professional contacts as possible. And don't be afraid to make mistakes, like, because honestly, like, the times when I've made mistakes, those are the times when I've really learned the most about myself and the potential that I have as a person and as a professional lender at this point. So
Oh, that's great. That's great. Thank you for
yeah.
that insight. It's part of the issue that continues to occur. I'm a Gen Xer, you're millennial. Part of the issues that continue to occur are not enough exposure and knowledge of the various careers that exist. There's still probably a saturation of people going into law, medicine, engineering, things they careers they believe will lead to uh, financial prosperity. Some are fulfilled by those things, but I think banking, for example, is something that people might view as boring, but that's only because they don't know all of these roles that exist in the banking industry. So, for you, what you
Mhm.
started at BB&T, you start in sales, and what does that mean? Sales in banking.
Yeah. Well, your first question, no, I actually did not start in sales. I started as a credit analyst. So, for those of you that don't know, anytime a business applies for a loan, the first thing that has to happen before that loan can actually be approved is the loan has to be what's called underwritten, where a credit analyst and/or an underwriter will collect some financial information and some business information and really assess what the risks are to the transaction, and also how to mitigate those risks. We would also look at, what is the likelihood that this business is going to repay the loan. And for me personally, getting a foundation as a credit analyst has actually resulted in me being a more effective salesperson. So, to your second question, I did not jump right into sales. And I think one reason for that is, in order to be an effective salesman, you have to have a value proposition. You have to know, what are you actually selling to somebody. And in banking, not only are you selling products and services, but you're selling yourself, you're selling your expertise, you're selling your relationship with somebody. So, to start off as a credit analyst, I really developed the basic fundamentals of cash flow that allow me now as a lender to quickly assess whether or not a business is likely going to be approved for a loan with me, and being able to recommend the appropriate product or service to help that particular business grow. And you said it already, but in banking there are multiple paths that you can take. A lot of people in banking, they start off in retail, so they go in and
Mhm.
they work as a teller. So they're depositing money, they're cashing checks, handling withdrawals, stuff like that. That's really a great way to see how the retail part of the bank operates. But the lifeblood of banking is deposits and loans. Those two
Hmm.
things are really what drive any bank in the country. And so, yes, on the retail side, you have to have deposits because the deposits are what fund the loans. And then to generate those loans successfully, you have to have boots on the ground. You have to have people that know the market, that can go out and meet these businesses, that are members of like the Rotary Club and United Way and other local trade and nonprofit organizations to be plugged in. I'm going to use your word again. You've got to be plugged in with your audience, with your community, and your market in order to be an effective salesman because there are banks everywhere. I mean, in my day to day, there's probably 9 or 10 like really strong competitors that do exactly what I do day to day. So, the key for me as a salesperson really is building those relationships, doing what I say I'm going to do. So, not retrading on people. That's the biggest mistake you can make as a banker is over promising something and under delivering or retrading on the customer at the ninth hour. So that's really key. Keep your word. Do what you say you're going to do. Answer your phone. Be responsive and be personable. There's a saying that I learned early on, which is people like to do business with people that they like. So
That's
be
right.
likable. I mean, so when I call a customer, I don't immediately go into, tell me about your business, tell me what you need from me, because like at that point they're just a number, they're not a person. But instead, my approach is, tell me about you. Where are you from? Do you have family? How did you get into this business? What sort of hobbies do you have? I mean, really build that early rapport with somebody first. And then at that point, their guard is down. It's like, oh, Matt's a real person. He actually cares enough to ask me about stuff besides just business. And I'd also say, like, take good notes and remember, like, little facts about people. So, if you're talking to somebody and they tell you, I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan, right? Like, if the Cowboys win, even though you may not be a Cowboys fan, send them a text and say, "Hey, nice job at the game on Saturday. I saw your team won." Little tidbits like that tell people you're listening and that you care about them and that you remember stuff about them personally. That goes a really long way in being a good salesman.
That is, you just dropped major gems. I mean, and that is your pocket, one of your pocket secrets you let out, right? So I hope the audience
Yep.
is appreciative of that. That connection piece is essential to building relationships. Um, so, do you think someone in college, is it necessary to have an accounting background, a business background? Can you have an English degree and still look to get into banking?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, most bankers do go the business route. So, either general business or accounting, finance. For me, I actually got a degree in business administration. And the reason for that is business administration covers pretty much all of the categories that you could think of: accounting, finance, marketing, management, etc. Because I really wanted to be well rounded and didn't want to limit myself to one particular area. I would also add that I enjoyed accounting in college, but it wasn't my favorite subject necessarily. So if you were like me, then you may not want to go the accounting route, and you can still get a good job in the banking sector. But that being said, and I'm going to reference the last bank that I was with, which is Live Oak Bank before joining Maple Mark. One of the great things about Live Oak is that they hired people from a diverse background. I actually witnessed at that institution, they had personal trainers because Live Oak was one of the few that actually had a gym on campus that employees could use. But I actually witnessed some of the personal trainers leave their position as a trainer and start off as a business advisor or as an underwriter or as a loan officer because they had the skills and the personality that was well suited to, get trained up and actually do that type of job. So if there are those listening in that don't necessarily have a finance or business background, don't let that deter you. I mean, you could even have an education background or an engineering background. As long as you have the personality and the willingness to be open minded and to learn and to grow and not be afraid to make mistakes, I think you could do a very good job in the banking sector. No question about it.
Well, that's great. That's really great info. Thank you again for that. So insightful. And I'm sure, all these plugs are just helpful to not only, Gen Z, to anyone potentially maybe wanting to switch to banking. Matt has provided an excellent background and transition into banking and sort of the path. There's the traditional path, like he said. You can be, at the retail front and work your way up essentially, or approach in other ways. Just gave an example of a trainer that transitioned into banking. So something that calls on your, certainly you have to have the aptitude, but also the personality and skill sets along those lines to help a transition like that. Matt, I wanted to quickly jump into sort of, I will say your niche financing,
Mhm.
but it is something that is large. It is something that people probably don't consider sort of or think about outside of rural. I have a hard time with that word. Environments, but speak a little bit to USDA financing.
Yes, great topic. Yeah, so for those of you that don't know, there is a loan guarantee program offered by the United States Department of Agriculture. However, it is not agriculture related. That's the first thing I wanted to mention. All the people that I talk to, and I mentioned I'm a USDA lender, they automatically think farm loans. These are not farm loans. There's a separate agency under USDA called Rural Development, and there are 4 programs available for various businesses, nonprofits, public bodies, and Indian tribes that have projects that are located in rural areas. So when I say a rural area, that is defined as a city or town with a population of 50,000 or less, which is based on the 2020 census that was done a few years ago. And actually, if you look at a map of the United States, you'll actually see that 95% of the entire country is segmented in a rural area, 50,000 or less in population. Most people don't realize that. And, when I started my banking career, I actually had no idea that there were programs out there where the federal government would actually guarantee the loan to a bank in order to incentivize certain investments and certain lending practices in certain key demographic areas. And the reason that they created this program makes total sense to me. But you think about a rural area, all of you, know a small town somewhere in the United States. What's common about that small town? I think a few things that I would say about that is infrastructure is not as modern or as up to date as a larger metropolitan area. So, what does that mean? That means that there are less investments coming in to upgrade the infrastructure, not only like the public infrastructure available, but also businesses and even homes. So the government, as part of this, they want to incentivize more banks to invest their time and resources and capital to helping these small communities grow and to create jobs and to provide for their families. So basically, the way the program works is that when the bank goes out and finds an eligible loan opportunity, the USDA will guarantee that loan 80% if something goes wrong in the future. So let's use round numbers. So let's say that you're a small business and you come to me and say, hey, I need a $10 million loan. I want to build a new warehouse and I want to put some machinery and equipment in order to expand my business. A $10 million loan that is guaranteed 80% means that me as the lender, I only take 20% of the risk, or $2 million if that loan goes bad. So not too bad, right? I put up 100% of the capital, but I only have to take 20% of the risk. So obviously, there's an incentive for me to go out and find opportunities like this because it's a great use of the bank's capital. And then one other thing I'll share about this too, banks are heavily regulated entities. So there's the State Banking Commission, there's the FDIC, there's the Treasury Department, there's the Controller, and there's all these regulations that govern banking as a whole. And anytime a bank originates a loan, the first thing that they have to have, one, is deposits, right? Because deposits are what fund the loans. And how does a bank actually get deposits? Well, they go and pay somebody for those deposits. So you bring your money to me and I pay you a certain interest rate. That's even before I've created a single loan. So if banks aren't lending, they are automatically at a deficit because they are constantly having to pay interest to bring in those deposits. And so that's where loans come in. But here's the thing with loans. Not only do you need enough money to provide that loan, so let's use the $10 million example. The bank obviously would need to have at least $10 million to provide a $10 million loan, but it doesn't stop there. The regulators will tell every bank, based on how large or small that they are, that in addition to having capital to provide the loan, they also have to reserve capital if that loan ever goes bad. Because if you do more bad loans than good loans and you don't have enough capital reserved to offset future losses, well, that could potentially endanger you from honoring all of your obligations to your depositors and to your customers. So the reason I'm mentioning all this is by having a government guarantee behind the loan, the reserve requirements, if the loan goes bad, are a lot smaller for the bank. So in the case where USDA provides an 80% guarantee, the lender only has to reserve 20% of the capital to do that loan, versus a conventional loan where we would have to reserve 100% of the capital. And just remember, every bit of capital that we have to reserve, those are somebody else's deposits that we have to pay to have. So the more loans we do that have a government guarantee behind them, the lower our cost of capital is, because it's a lower amount that we have to reserve if the loan goes bad. So hopefully I'm not getting too technical, but just to summarize it, the reason I like this space is there's a government incentive. We only take 20% of the risk to do 100% of the loan, and also the ability to help smaller businesses in rural areas that have less access to capital than larger metropolitan areas. It's really, really rewarding to see somebody that started from the bottom in a rural area, and providing them a loan allows them to become a millionaire one day. Like I love that idea that doesn't matter where you are, where you're from, where you're located, you can access these programs, grow your business, create jobs, and create something that you can pass down to your family members. That's the American dream for me.
Matt, I don't think they realize that not only have you provided, I was smiling because I was thinking, listening to you, this is the wisdom of someone who has sat in an industry and achieved expertise in it. You speak not only so articulately about it, but I should say you articulate it nice, um, but you also just speak with so much knowledge and background. You provided, again, not just 101 information. I mean, this is sort of coursework stuff that you're providing. So really appreciate that. I do want to ask before we move on to the really fun stuff, what is a typical day for you? You work from home, for example. What is a typical day for you in the sales part of USDA lending?
Yeah, great question. Well, first thing I'd say is I am a nationwide USDA lender. So obviously that means I have to cover the entire United States from my home office. So not an easy task to do. And let's contrast that with a local, community banker, because I think part of this conversation is not only about USDA but just also about banking in general. So you have two different scenarios. If you're a community banker, then you're focused on a specific demographic or community. So if you're that type of person and that's your role, then you're going to be spending more time outside of the house. You're going to be, plugged into local trade groups and businesses, nonprofits, et cetera, to really get the word out about who you are and what you're doing. But for me, since my span is nationwide, a lot of my day to day, at least in the early stages of my career, was cold calling people. So looking on a map of the U.S. and finding out like where the rural businesses are located, and actually conducting outreach to them by cold calling. So I used to go and actually pull databases. So I'd pick a state. I'm in North Carolina, but pick any state that you can think of, and I would identify all the cities and towns in that particular state that had less than 50,000 in population that I knew would qualify for USDA. And then what I would do is I would try to pinpoint of those states, what are the top industries present? Is it manufacturing? Is it healthcare? Is it retail? Is it hospitality, et cetera? So then I would start to narrow down, okay, here are the top 5 industries, and here's where those businesses are located in these rural areas. And I would actually start to cold call people. And advice that I would give those listening, first thing is don't be afraid to be told no or to have your ego shut down. Because I can tell you when I started out cold calling people, people would hang up the phone on me. And you've got to be able to take that, humbly and say, okay, obviously that person wasn't interested in what I had to say. But what I've learned over time is that, it's all about maximizing your percentages. Think of a professional athlete. Let's use Michael Jordan as an example because I'm a big Michael Jordan fan. But, I have to believe that Michael Jordan missed a lot of shots during his career. But when people go back and talk about him, it's not the shots that he missed that really stand out. It's the shots that he made. So who cares what his miss percentage was? It was the fact that he was one of the most successful basketball players, both personally and professionally, of anyone in the history of basketball. Like that's what people remembered about him. So I kind of take that same approach. Like, yeah, there are days where people are going to hang up the phone, or maybe I spend hours of my time trying to dig up a lead and I'm not successful. But if I go back and look at a particular month or a particular year and I got more wins than I had losses, then why does it matter all the times I got hung up, the phone on? So don't be afraid to take risks. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there. I would also say, don't be afraid to ask for the business. Like literally go up to somebody and say, how can I win your business? How can I win your relationship? And they'll tell you, listen, be perceptive. And actually that's another good point. Definitely be a good listener more than just a good talker. And I know you said that I articulate well, but part of being an effective communicator, it starts with being a good listener. And there's a book that I read a while back. Most people have heard about it before. It's from Dale Carnegie. It's called How to Win Friends and Influence People. If there's anything you can take away from this call today, go and read that book. It will change your life. Not only does it teach you about how to be a good son or a good dad or a sister or mother, but a good business person, a good friend. I mean, basically, the moral of that book is that anytime you're with somebody, make them your subject. It's not about you, it's about the other person. Kind of like, the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Most people, when you're sitting and listening to them, they like to talk about themselves. They like to tell you about the things that they're interested in. They like to tell you about their business, their home life, the sports teams that they're interested in. So really listen and pick up on those things, and validate those things. Don't start with yourself, because if you start with yourself and not the other person, you're not building that rapport, and you're not going to reach that person. Always start with the other person, and you'd be amazed at the success that you're going to have.
So, what I'm hearing as part of that summary is just servant leadership. You're really talking about serving others and leading in that way, in the most genuine way, but having a mentality of like servant leadership. Um, so, Matt, yeah, appreciate that. You're giving me all these robust answers. All I can do is sit in the background and go, yes, yes, go, Matt. That's great. Go. Um, so let's
And
jump.
one more thing, Gene. I wanted to tie one more thing because you had asked about like how do I conduct my day to day. LinkedIn is also, I would tell every young person, or really any person, no matter young person, old person, wherever you're at, use LinkedIn to market yourself. Make yourself unique. Put out testimonials of things that you've been up to, both personally and professionally. That has been a huge source of new business for me. And we live in a modern age where social media and technology is how people conduct business, and also in banking. Every bank has a mobile app where you can deposit your money or check your accounts. So don't be afraid to put yourself out there, and definitely take full advantage of LinkedIn. And I did not have a LinkedIn page when I was in college, but I'm starting to see a lot more students that actually have their profile and they go out and market to employers. So that'd be another nugget of truth that I would recommend to anyone listening. Have a LinkedIn profile, and put content out there that you think people might be interested in. There's no wasted effort there. So
Oh, that's great. That's great. Let's jump right into the really, really fun stuff. So, part of your lifestyle as a father and husband is, working from home. Now, you got to that point. I'm sure, I shouldn't say I'm sure, but for some of us, the pandemic heavily influenced the work from home environment. But in roles like yours, it does not require necessarily sitting in someone's office. So, that overall contributes to time with friends, time with your family, and of course, the discipline alongside that requires, because, that freedom, with that freedom comes immense responsibility. So, lifestyle wise, like, I will not say, how much money you make. I kind of have an idea, but you do very well, especially to live in North Carolina. I'll just leave it at this. I know that you're in the six figures, and you have been for a little while. So there are some people out there like, well, I'm going to be this billionaire. I was like, okay, cool. Let me know when you get there. But until then, there are people in careers making six figures, um, doing very well, living nicely, traveling nicely, providing for their family. So, I said a lot, but lifestyle for you, I'm sure, comes into play.
yeah, yeah. Well, first thing I'll say is, my first job in banking starting out was not anywhere close to six figures. So, first nugget of truth I'd share today is, don't expect to come right out of school or right out of the gate at that level. You're going to have to start off small, and it might mean that you're going to work a job initially that is not your ideal. But that is what builds resiliency and a knowledge base to really help you be successful. One thing I didn't mention, Gene, is actually when I had graduated from ECU, I was a magna cum laude, which means that I had mostly A's and a handful of B's. I had a 3.7 GPA. The only internship I had was the Fox Sports internship. And when I graduated from college at that particular time, this was 2010, there weren't a lot of businesses out there that wanted to hire a recent college graduate that didn't have a whole lot of real world work experience. A lot of folks in college, they are not athletes. They, work, jobs as a waiter or waitress or at a hotel or something like that. And believe it or not, that actually gives them somewhat of an edge because they come into the workforce with some sort of, real world experience. And for me, I was a college tennis player and then I was a tennis instructor and I had one internship under my belt. So I actually, believe it or not, after a few months out of school, could not find a job that I was really interested in. I went back to school and got my MBA. And a semester before my master's degree was when I was hired for the first time as a credit analyst. And my first job out of college was $43,000 a year salary with an MBA. So for those that are curious, I mean, that's not a lot of money, and certainly somebody with a master's degree. There's a lot of people out there that think, oh, if I have a master's degree, I'm automatically guaranteed a six-figure salary. Not the case. But what that master's degree gave me was an opportunity to be part of a large organization with one of the best training programs in the country, which was BB&T's Credit Analyst Academy. I mean, and that became a fundamental baseline for me to where I am now. All the fundamentals of cash flow and lending that I carry with me started in that low paying job that I took right out of college. So and honestly, I don't know if it's a new generation thing, but I feel like a lot of young people these days, they just expect success. Like they just expect because you're an American citizen and you have a college degree that entitles you to getting a six-figure paycheck. And not to say that you shouldn't strive for that and not to say that people shouldn't get that. It's just it can't be handed to you. You've actually got to earn that for yourself. And so having some humility and recognizing that, hey, if you do have to take a job that's less than desirable, but it's giving you a certain skill set that over the next several years could turn into a potential six-figure salary, then it's not so bad as you may think in that moment. Um, and then to segue just for a second over to the other thing you said, yeah, working from home is really a blessing for me, but it is also a high level of responsibility because you have to be visible when you work from home. You don't go into the office every day. People don't always see what you're up to, so you have to be visible. So for me, I do get to see my family during the day, but like I'm working probably right now 50, 60 hours a week or more, despite the fact that I work from home. I do get to see my kids more than a lot of dads that have to drive into the office, but I definitely am a creature of habit, and I've made it a habit of sticking to my work. And normally I start my day around 7, but when I'm turning my computer on and I'm in my office here. People that go into the office, they don't typically start their day until 8:30 or 9, right? So that's part of the key for me. Start my day early, make sure to work until at least 5, and make sure that the people inside my organization that don't work from home, that I'm visible to those people. They don't have to question what Matt is up to at home. Matt is working. Matt is hustling. He's out there really trying to drum up business, and I definitely don't take this for granted.
That's right. That's right. The discipline, the focus. Um, Listen, there are multiple paths to success. Uh, whether people want a career, whether they're, entrepreneurs, the principles underlying all of that is discipline, focus, things that lead to success cannot be cheated. There's, a lot of people. I watch a lot of YouTube to try to stay current on what people see, what they want. There's a lot of, individuals on there. I make $300 million a year. I'm like, okay. Um, I didn't see you in Fortune, but doesn't mean you're not making that 300 million. So that it's created this environment, and I don't want to be critical, but I think people undercut the hard work that they don't see. They don't see the 50 to 60 hours a week. They don't see the getting up every day and pushing feelings aside. I don't feel like it. Who cares? Yeah, you got to get up. You got to go. The pushing through sickness. So there's a lot of, discipline, hard work, determination, um, switching of your brain right to left side. You got to be personable 1 minute. You need to be listening the next minute. You need to be knowledgeable about your product the next minute. So there's all these different factors going on. So anyway, I appreciate you just pointing out that, yes, you travel to conferences. I'm sure you got a gazillion miles and travel first class at times. You probably live nice, you earn well, but you've also worked very hard for that. You've worked extremely hard for that. So appreciate the insight on that. Any just last minute advice? You've dropped so many gems, but any sort of just grown man last minute advice? Did you feel, I don't know, like your getting married and having kids, functioned better for you in your early 30s, in your late 20s? Um, you know, any general advice?
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I got married in my mid to late 20s, and my wife and I, we spent a few years together just as husband and wife before we started having children. But like I mentioned at the beginning, having kids for me really was the greatest success I've had in life, and it's also taught me how precious and short that life is. So, the advice I would say is don't settle in your life if you're not content or happy in your career or in your relationship. Don't settle. We live in the land of opportunity, and I know that America is not perfect. We've got some things in our past that we shouldn't have done, but like we're always striving for that more perfect union every single day. And I think that's one of the keys for me is I don't take a single day for granted. I think life is a gift. I believe that we were created by God to love others and to strive for greatness. And we have a legacy to live for in our families. All of us have a mom and a dad or other family members that look up to us, and we carry their that name around. And so and then you add to that having children. Now all of a sudden you're not just living for yourself, you're living for people that look like you, that are looking up to you. So that's become my new focus in life, is really setting a good example for my children about how to live life to the full, how to love others, how to have a forgiving heart. Because that's key. People are going to make mistakes in your life, and you got to be able to forgive those people and recognize that they're just human beings like you are. I've certainly made my fair share of mistakes in life, but but I'm forgiven for all of that in Jesus Christ. And so that belief just does something to you where you don't take a single life or a single day for granted. So and that's another good piece of advice. Like wherever you're at, like really maximize what you're doing. So you're in college, get up and go to class, go to the library, put in those hours. It's not for granted. It's going to pay off for you. You're a school teacher. Get up. You might not be making a six-figure job, but you are shaping young minds. Like recognize the value that you bring in that job description. My mom was a public school teacher for 30 years, and she still has students that call her today and say, Kay, thank you so much for being my teacher 20 years ago. There are things that you told me then that I now have taught my kids that we are raising now in our household. So wherever you're at, strive for greatness. Don't settle. Be forgiving. Be coachable too. Like, be willing to take feedback from other people that is constructive. Don't take it personally, as hard as that is. I mean, I think everybody to a certain extent has an ego that they have to deal with, but the people that are the most coachable, I think, are the people that are the most successful in life, because they have the ability to listen to others and improve and grow. They're not set in their ways. So I know that's a lot to unpack there, but just trying to share from my life what's been successful. And then on the sales side, be responsive. Answer your phone, call people back, do what you say you're going to do. And that's not just professional, that's also in life. Like, do what you say you're going to do. I mean, just basic stuff like that. You're going to end up exactly where you want to be and then some by doing those simple steps.
Matt Peeler, thank you again. Appreciate you coming on Career Plug. You provided so much information, so much insight, so much knowledge. And gosh, to be a millennial, you just have a lot of wisdom, man. God bless you. I usually leave out with like a punch and I say later. So on three, we're going to do on three, two, one, later. There you go.
Later.